Hi, folks. It's a pretty bold statement, eh? Who believes it? All right. So my aim is to get a few of you, I'm not going to convince you in 30 minutes, but I think I'm going to make you think, because I know this to be true, that we have a very bright future and the next 30 years will be the best in New Zealand's history. So you say, how do you know that? Well, I know it because I want to go back to my roots. I grew up in Sunnyvale. Anyone know where Sunnyvale is? Yeah, real West Auckland, right? You know Outrageous Fortune? Those are bloody poofters from Tat North. Sunnyvale is where the real West began. My road, Seymour Road, at that time had 104 houses. 100 of them were Māori and Pacifica families, and there were about 4 European families. And back in those days, actually life was okay. Everyone had a job and everyone had just enough money. But when you live in a street like Seymour Road, you know that as soon as something goes wrong, things go wrong very quickly indeed. And, I was living amongst what you would call the working poor. I was lucky, though. I made one amazing decision in life. I chose my parents well. And my mum and dad were school teachers, and they gave me a set of values and principles that I abandoned for a while but came back to. So when I was in Seymour Road in Sunnyvale, I wanted to be rich because I saw people who were richer every now and again, and that's what I wanted. So I went off and pursued money, and I had an incredibly lucky career overseas as an investment banker in New York, London, and Hong Kong, and so on. And I came back to New Zealand and ran some finance companies as well. And then when I got to about 45, I started looking in the mirror, and I didn't like the person I saw. Because all I was doing was making myself richer and a few people around me richer, but I wasn't looking after the people of Seymour Road in Sunnyvale. And so I actually gave it all up. The business I was running was sold. I spent a year planting trees on Motutapu Island because I thought I was going to plant millions of native trees. And then after a year, my back was stuffed. So with a sore back, I decided, what are we going to do? And so what we did was, I'll just tell you what we're going to go through here. So what we did was a bunch of us set up around our kitchen table a business, and we decided to become gamekeepers turned poachers. We were all from the finance industry. We knew where the bodies were buried. We knew where the margins were. We knew where the profit was. And we decided to turn that all around and actually make money and give it back to the people of Seymour Road and Sunnyvale. And basically, fundamentally, Simplicity is what we call a dignity company. We want people to live with dignity. And how do you have a dignified life? You have choices in life. The how you have dignity is to have choices. A life with choices is a life with dignity. If you can choose where you live, choose where you go on holiday, choose the car you drive, you have dignity. The other way of putting that is that poverty sucks. When you can't choose where you live, you can't have a holiday, you can't choose the food you want to eat, life is horrible. So what do you need to do in order to have choices in life and dignity? Money. Money gives you choices in life, and choices gives you dignity. Money is not a dirty word. Money is an incredibly empowering word if it gives you the choices that you need in life to have a dignified one. So we decided to be a dignity company, and we said, how will we make people the most amount of money? Well, first of all, is we set ourselves up as a charity. Simplicity, anything you see with Simplicity is fundamentally owned by 100% owned by a charity. We set up a non-profit company. We started out in KiwiSaver. Then we did investment funds, which are the same as KiwiSaver funds, same fees, same investments, but you get your money out at any time. We then got into first home mortgages. I know in your business here, you may be interested to know we are the lowest cost first home lender in the country for our members. Just so you know, because I know you know these things, 4.8% floating rate. We want people to pay off their mortgages as fast as possible and own their own home. And we started off 8 years ago, and we've become a default KiwiSaver manager. What that actually means is that in those 8 years, we now have actually this is a couple of weeks old now, we have 172,000 members. We manage about $8.3 billion of money, and we save people about $400 a year in fees, because our fees are about a quarter of the industry standard, because the other 3/4 is profit. The finance industry is magnificent at making money out of New Zealanders. So we save about $400 per member, and we give 15% of our fees to our foundation, and that's been over $10 million in 8 years, and it's increasing at about $3 million a year now. So that's Simplicity. So why does that story How does that mean that I know that the next 30 years will be our best ever? Well, let me talk first of all about our challenges, because who thinks it's pretty rough out there right now? Who thinks we've got some challenges? Who's got kids here? Who worries about the future for them? I sure as hell do, because look at these challenges. This is a chart showing households who could afford to buy things like fruit, vegetables, and meat way back in 1987 on the left-hand side and 2023 on the right-hand side. And in every single instance, households report that it is harder to pay for the things that you might want to eat. These are not luxuries. This is not caviar and champagne. This is the basic stuff. It is getting harder to feed our families. The second thing is, and you will be familiar with this, we as a country have a massive housing shortage. If on the right there, that grey bar shows that just to meet the average of rich countries, the OECD average, which we consider ourselves a rich country, we would have to build another 166,000 houses in New Zealand just to be average in the wealthy world. And if you have a look at it, you'll be familiar with this if you're from Auckland. Auckland has a critical housing shortage. These are primarily in apartments, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments. But you'll see all through the country, almost nobody has enough houses. The third issue is we've got climate realities. This is the existential crisis of our generation and our children's. All of that atmospheric CO2, we've got to deal with it, we've got to handle it, we've got to fix it. And we've got this guy. We've done it again. So with all of that volatility and craziness that goes around having him in charge of the United States. And also, a lot of people say New Zealand is small and far away and insignificant. Here is a 2,000 kilometre ring around Wellington. You hit nothing but ocean. 2,000 kilometres around Berlin, and you have the whole of Europe, a much bigger, more addressable market. So we're small and far away, and we've still got all of these problems, right? We have challenges, except, and this is where the good news is. I've taken you to a bad place now, and now we're going to start going up again, right? Except that, look at we say we're a small country, that's rubbish. New Zealand is actually quite a big country. If you overlaid it on Europe, it is a very significant part of the land area of Europe, or, significant enough. We're big. The second thing is, if you look at where our trading balance has gone over the years, we used to be totally reliant on the UK. We are now becoming an Asia-Pacific nation. That is the centre of gravity of our imports and exports. So we are actually parking ourselves in the fastest growing part of the world that is accumulating the wealth faster. And if you're in the agricultural business now, you know how that feels, because you can feel the commodity prices right now. The third thing is, if you have a look at New Zealand, back on the left-hand side here, back in 1874, all we did was export gold and wool, and if you look at the left-hand side there, to Australia and the UK. Gold and wool, Australia, UK. That was our economic future. Look at it on the right-hand side now. We have much more diversified exports. That other is things like movies, software, rockets, all that other stuff, much more diversified, and going to countries on the right-hand side of this chart, which are way more diversified as well. So even if the United States wants to put tariffs on New Zealand goods, see that dark green bar there? It's not that big a deal. We are a much more diversified economy, exporting to many more places in the world, far more added value products. But here's the really interesting news, and I don't blame you for not realizing this. This is kind of an interesting audience to tell this story in. Because back in 2007, only 20% of people had household savings outside of their home or their investment property. You and I know that the smart investment decision for New Zealanders for generations has been buy more properties and benefit from the fact that we haven't been building enough houses. Demand beats supply, the real price of houses goes up. But then, if you have a look now, over 60% of New Zealand households have savings other than their properties or investment properties. Do you know what that is? Begins with a K. KiwiSaver. We have begun a journey of saving in KiwiSaver, and this is what it looks like. Today, it's $120 billion. Now, that's $120 billion that would have otherwise been spent on paying off bigger mortgages. It is one of the reasons why house prices are levelling out. Not only are they expensive, but also marginal income is being saved. We know that that could be at least $900 billion by 2050. That is so conservative. The real number is likely to be well north of $2 or $3 trillion of savings. We are saving our way to prosperity. New Zealand is going from being capital starved. You know that phrase, number 8 wire? You know, I do it with number 8 wire. New Zealanders romanticize making do with less money. We are used to feeling and operating like a poor country, but we are about to get richer. Now, what does that mean in terms of money? Just how much does that mean for New Zealand? Well, I know this because this is my job. We see money coming in every single day. In fact, let me ask you a question. In the 8 years that Simplicity has been operating, guess how many days we've had to sell investments to give people back their money? 0. Not one. Every single day I come into the office and there's about another $5 million in the bank account. And that's $5 million we have to invest, and it keeps on going up. And about 30% of KiwiSaver money is now invested in New Zealand. If you assume by 2050 that 30% was still invested in New Zealand, how much more money do you think KiwiSaver managers have to invest in New Zealand? This is in the next 25 years. Anyone want to take a guess? Or just put your hands up. Do you think it's $10 billion? No, that's too much, is it? Or too little? Too little? $20 billion? 30? 40? 50? 60? I'll stop. It's that much. $250 billion just to keep the amount that we have saved in KiwiSaver, all of us, invested in New Zealand. We have to invest another $250 billion in New Zealand. So folks, when you start hearing about an infrastructure deficit, when you start hearing about the roads and the hospitals and the schools and the power systems we all need, that funds all of it. Because I have never seen an estimate for an infrastructure deficit in New Zealand that is bigger than $200 billion. We begin funding our own future. And in New Zealand, we have been seduced by the idea that the only people with money are foreigners. You can see it in this government. In the infrastructure conference they just ran, they had 50 foreigners with money, but only 2 KiwiSaver managers. We think that the only supplier of money is Johnny Foreigner, and I get that, because back post-World War II, before World War II, the British owned everything. And then the British went bankrupt, and then the Americans arrived. This is when my mum and dad bought an American car. And then the Americans ran out of money in the 1980s, and the Japanese arrived and bought these things. My mum and dad bought a Japanese car. And then the Japanese went bust, and who's arrived now? Where's all this money supposed to be coming from? The Chinese. They're about to buy a Chinese car. So, and you can see it if you look at the Tasman Pulp and Paper Mill, built by the English, sold to the Americans, sold to the Japanese, and now it's gone bust. New Zealand has had tidal waves of capital from overseas, and we've got used to thinking that they're the only people who supply it. But this is a rising tide of money. You don't even notice it. Have you ever watched a tide rise? You say, oh, I'm going to watch the tide rise now. Nothing's happening. Nothing happening. Turn around. Ooh, the tide's gone up. This is what's happening in New Zealand. And I know that you know this because I'm going to ask you a question. Can you give me an example of another country that started saving in their superannuation around about 1985, 1990? Close to us, speaks the same language, that feels a lot richer than us? Australia. We are where Australia was in 1985. Hands up if you'd like to be where Australia was in 1985 and look forward to the next 30 years. Any of you been to Brisbane? Same size as Auckland. Much bigger buildings, much wider roads, much more infrastructure, funded by their superannuation funds. And it's the same everywhere else in the developed world. Canada, America, Britain, Denmark, Sweden, Germany, where people have saved, they have started to get a lot richer. So Aotearoa New Zealand is not just going to be a little bit richer, we are going to be much richer. And I realize it doesn't feel like that. I get that you don't see it right now and there's bad news. But trust me, when I have to invest that money every single day, I can see that we have this rising tide of prosperity, and that will mean more jobs, better jobs, and as a country, we will have the dignity of having choices that more money brings. So, proof point one, it's actually happening. We are actually saving and beginning it, but we don't see it yet. Let me give you an example, though, in your world of how this is really happening. 5 years ago, my daughter came home. I live in Takapuna. She goes to Takapuna Grammar, a Decile 10 state school. She said, "Dad, do you realise that 2 of my teachers are living in garages because they can't find a house to live in or can't pay the rent?" I went, "This is bloody crazy." This is as we were starting Simplicity. Then I went out as part of our foundation. I met a Pacifica family in Manukau who had moved house 8 times in 9 years because the landlord had sold the house from under them. Their kids had moved school 5 times in 9 years. And I don't know if any of you have kids, but kids moving school is a traumatic experience for them. So I decided that I wanted to get serious about doing something about it. So I went to my friend and our patron, who is Stephen Tyndall. I said, "Stephen, all this money is coming. Who should I be talking to get houses built?" He said, "Go and talk to Shane and Anna Brearley from NZ Living." And Shane and Anna, to cut a very long story short, have effectively given Simplicity their company, and we have provided the money, they provide the smarts, and we decided to take making affordable rental housing a possibility in New Zealand. So, here's what we've done in 4 years. These are the 3 developments that we have completed. This one just recently, Rangeview Road in Mount Albert on the left-hand side. I know I can talk the language of real estate with you folks. It was built in 1 year. It's built to last 150 years because we intend to own it forever. It is for long-term rental, so people can live there for the rest of their lives if they want to. And we built it for 35% below the average building cost because we're vertically integrated. We buy the land, we do the building, with the construction ourselves. We even have our staff rent out the apartments and we maintain them. And you capture all of that margin in between. So that's the most recent one. We've also done those 2. So we have 210 houses now. And I don't know if you've been out to Mount Wellington, you'll see this huge building going up, the Simplicity Living. This is the 2nd biggest residential building site, I think, in the country right now. Te Rupita, 297 homes. It will be open this time next year. 297 homes built in 2 years for 35% below, which, by the way, gives our members... Yeah, thank you. This, by the way, gives our members, Simplicity members, I'm going to say one plug, you can switch in 2 minutes, simplicity.kiwi. Gives our members, this is about 5% of what they invest. It's only 5% of our pool of money builds stuff like this. And this will be built, open and fully rented this time next year. That's the 2nd biggest residential construction site in New Zealand because the biggest is this one that we've just started. And every time you go past the southern motorway now, you'll see it. It's technically in Remuera. I love saying we're building affordable homes in Remuera. 330 homes, and that will be open by May 2027. It's incredible how fast it goes up, you'll see. So, this is one that we have consented. We will be starting building this in Morningside, just around from Crove Cafe, another 262 homes. That starts construction next month. And we have another 90 in the consent process. We'll be making an announcement about something on the North Shore soon. So, in 4 years, we have 1,189 homes built or under construction or consented, and our target is 10,000. And what's amazing about that is only a very small slice of all the money that we manage, and we are only one KiwiSaver manager. So that is a very real example of what happens when this rising tide of money starts to get invested in New Zealand. That is why we have a bright future. This site will employ 200 people. This site, 300 people at its best. 300 families. That's food on the table for 300 families when there is a construction downturn. And that's the other interesting thing. KiwiSaver money keeps on coming in, so we just invest through the cycle. We are buying lots of land right now at very good prices because we're a counter-cyclical buyer. And this is what happens in Australia. You don't see Australia. Can I ask you a question? I don't know if anyone knows this. In the last 30 years, how many years has Australia been in recession? Anyone know? 1, technically. They have had growth for 29 years because their pension funds have been funding this sort of infrastructure and providing the jobs, which means you have a much more stable economy. So we're not going to see the boom and bust. We're not going to be hanging on the price of milk quite the way we used to, because this sort of activity is going to go on. So, here's an example of what we've done, one KiwiSaver provider. You'll see the built-to-rent home, Simplicity Living. We've already spent $232 million. You know, it's going up a lot. We provided low-cost first home mortgages. We also fund community housing providers in New Zealand to build, social housing. We've also funded 72 startups via Icehouse Ventures, and we've also got private equity where we're buying minority stakes in great family companies. The most recent example would be Stabbycraft down in Invercargill. And I just wanted to show you this as an example because Simplicity has spent $553 million on making money and doing good in New Zealand, and that is only 7.5% of all the money we manage. So the law of large numbers really starts to kick in here. You can get lots of money getting invested because the amount of money that KiwiSaver managers will be investing will literally be in the trillions of dollars. You have no idea how capital rich New Zealand is going to be over the next 30 years. And for your business, that means it's really good because all of those jobs, higher paid jobs, better jobs, mean people can afford to buy the homes that they want to live in. There is nothing like being in your business when you're in a rich country versus a less rich country. So, will the next 30 years be our best ever? Can I ask for a show of hands? Have I begun to convince you? Yeah. Just wait and see. And I'm going to give you one thing to look for to know that this is happening. Have you noticed, I don't know if you've noticed this, but have you noticed how the papers say, GDP was just a little bit more than forecast? Or incomes have risen just a little bit more? Or unemployment is not quite so bad? You're going to see, now I'm not saying it's always going to be good news, there will be downturns, but the next 30 years are going to be 3 decades of constant little surprises. So every single time you think things are a little better or it's a little bit of a surprise, it's not a surprise to me. Because exactly what we are doing here is exactly what has happened overseas in all these countries where people have started saving. So if you want to see what Auckland is going to look like in 10 to 15 years, look at Brisbane now. If you want to see what it's going to be like in 30 years, look at Sydney and Melbourne right now. Well, we'll beat the fucking Aussies anyway, but we'll accelerate and catch up because right now the Australians are saving 12% of their income in their superannuation funds. New Zealanders are only saving on average between 4 and 6%. So once we up those contributions and make it compulsory, that is the engine of prosperity that will drive the country. Now, I usually spend about 45 minutes giving this, and I thought I'd race through because it was 30 minutes, and I recognise I've done it in about 23, which is an all-time record for me. So, folks, I want you to go, any of you have kids, right? I want you to go home and tell them that you saw this guy, and I don't care what you say about my speech, but I want you to tell them the message that you heard this story, and it was backed up by facts about how good life is going to be for them, because I am sick of kids being told bad news and sick of them looking into the future and saying, what does this future mean for me? Because it is going to be a future powered with more money, and I don't have to tell this audience that, to a certain extent, money helps make the world go round. And this is going to power our future prosperity. So I'm going to pause there. David, do you want to?
Mate, I just want to say thank you so much for the positive message.
You're welcome. And it's not just fluff, it's for real. I'm one of 30 KiwiSaver managers, and trust me, the other 29 have exactly the same experience. Money coming in every day.
So I was curious, as you were talking about those, I guess you're one of the KiwiSaver providers. Are the others also investing into New Zealand?
They are, but not as much. I think we're kind of driven by, the interesting thing about running a non-profit owned by a charity is that we don't make any money. That means we're not worth any money. That means we'll never be bought or sold. That means we're going to be around for 100 years. And so, yeah. And that changes how you think about things. It makes us deeply a Kiwi company, but also we can afford to do long-term things like build houses. These things take time. So it's not the easy way to do it, but it is definitely the best way to do it.
It's interesting because I hadn't actually heard about some of those i.e. the investment fund, but also the mortgages.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be of interest to our audience.
Yeah.
Tell us, like, are there special criteria you have to meet to be able to access a
Yeah.
floating rate of 4.8%? Because
Yeah.
I'm quite keen.
Sure. So I apologise to any bankers in the room. I don't hate you, I just hate who you work for. Look, New Zealand is an unbelievable mortgage market, right? I mean, the net interest margin on banks is typically over 2%. That is extremely high globally, and it has been for a long time. There's a whole lot of reasons why, but the bottom line is New Zealanders pay too much for their mortgages. So what we decided to do is we thought, look, that 2%, let's make the mortgage, so let's lend to our members directly with members' money, so nobody in between, no brokers or anything. And let's take that 2%, brokers have a very valuable role in society, but just we can do it without them. Take that 2%, we'll give 1% back to our members in terms of extra returns for providing the money, and we'll charge 1% less, or target to charge 1% less than the 1-year rate, our blended rate, and so our members get a cheaper mortgage. And we'll make it floating because we want them to pay it off as soon as possible. It's interesting, of our mortgages, 60% of people pay more than they have to, because we want to take that money again and lend it to the next person and keep on recycling it. So you have to be a member. It has to be for first homes only, because we don't have this unlimited pile of cash. But you'll slowly see us announcing getting more and more active in the mortgage market. And the idea is to make a fair return for our members and provide a fair deal for people getting into particularly their first homes. So I think the next thing we'll do is we'll start refinancing of first homes, because we just want Kiwis to get on that. By the way, I want to test an idea with you. Promise you won't tell anybody, right? You know those houses we're building here? How about if I said to you this? How about if I said, why don't you rent this house for 6 months and decide whether you like it? And if it's your first home and you want to buy it, I'll tell you what, we'll sell it to you at a third-party valuation, independent valuation. We will then provide the mortgage, because we're first-home mortgages. We don't lend on apartments right now because we can't trust the build quality, but we know ours are great. We'll provide you with a mortgage, floating rate, and then at the end, if you want to sell it, you sell it back to us at an independent valuation. Because the reason is I don't want you buying the house and selling it to the mongrel mob. That spoils the neighbourhood. You sell it back to us, you get complete liquidity. That means you have bought and sold your first home with no banks. I'm sorry to say this, no real estate agents.
Be careful.
But you have got the money to go and buy your second home. And you bought your first home faster. And that is a great deal for our members, because we get to, we can then decide to rent it. Or imagine if it's over 65s and we said that retired people, you can buy this and then your estate, if you pass away, can just sell it back to us. Right? No Ryman margin or anything like that. I think this could be, my mum and dad bought a state home with a state advances loan as their first home. That's how they got on the ladder. Maybe we can resurrect that. And this gets everyone on the ladder, and then when they get on the ladder, they do cool stuff, and you sell them their second, third, fourth, and fifth houses. Do you like that idea?
Love it.
Yeah. What we've got to do, though, is we've got to build thousands of these things, right? And that takes time. So it'll take time, but time is our friend. And time is New Zealand's friend, and time is your children and your friend as well.
I love that perspective. I've got one last one for you. I think, given your viewpoint, I know the question that we're always asked and sometimes told by our owners, maybe I'll just wait for the market to get better. I think delaying decision-making sometimes is foolish, waiting for the market to get better. But what's your perspective on that? Sell now or wait? And if you were choosing to wait for some reason, how long until it gets, inverted commas, better?
Sure. I have absolutely no idea.
That's good.
But I do know this: like New Zealand's going to slowly get richer, so the property market will be underpinned by greater wealth. When I say to a young person, "How do I make money?" the first thing I tell them is buy the most expensive house you can and pay it off as fast as you can, because the tax-free capital gains. I don't have to tell you that it's a great investment. Actually, a secret: most fund managers, including myself, we've made most of our money in property. Yeah, it's a great investment. So So I don't know what the market will do short term, but long term, because New Zealand's prosperity is now kind of underwritten by our savings to a certain extent, that is very, very good news long term. And it's doubly good news because as we get immigration in and as it is so expensive to build, housing stock actually becomes probably scarcer, unfortunately. We're trying to do something about it, but we can't solve the problem ourselves. But until New Zealand can find a way to build, back in the 1980s, 70s and 60s, we were building on average about 30,000 more homes per annum than we are now. We are critically short of houses and we haven't worked out how to build them cheaper. Give you an example, we've got a productivity hub on one of our sites here at Mount Wellington. We have shown 3,000 people around this and we've said, this is how you build it, this is how much it costs, yes, it's 35%. By the way, here's all the plans, here's all the IP, it's all free. We just want you to go and build a whole lot of these things and sell them. 4 people have done it. 4 out of 3,000, yeah. New Zealanders are very stuck in the way that they build houses and it's very expensive.
Mate, well, we love what you're doing, love the positivity and the viewpoint. Ladies and gentlemen, Sam Stubbs!